One of those days where I probably shouldn't be in the pulpit because my mind is in many different places. A lot to think about, and the Celtic music is contributing to one's thoughts wandering because it addresses the deep places that words cannot reach. But I have to speak, so I will. So bear with me as we try to engage another theme that I want to introduce in our journey towards Easter, where I said I think it's good for us to try and in our Lenten Sundays to take opposites or things that seem to contradict each other and try and hold them together, and in that tension experience, hopefully, the creative tension that leads to renewal as we engage the complexity of life. So that we will hopefully arrive at Easter as people that have somehow been transformed as we wrestle with these themes. We listened to two passages, or one passage with two stories in it, and then a second passage, the well-known passage about the Great Commandment. In the first passage, we have two narratives, two stories about women. And as I've said in the announcements, I thought today was International Women's Day, so that's why I selected two female figures. The woman that was suffering from hemorrhages and the daughter of Jairus. We find Jesus just after he dealt with demons and sent them into the pigs according to the scriptures in that region. And then he was in town again, and as it is so often described in the Gospels, there was this crowd around him. And then we find the leader of the synagogue coming with a request to him, say, "Can you please leave this and come and save my daughter? She's severely ill." And there is every indication that Jesus agreed to do that. And as he was trying to get away, there was this woman without him seeing it, touching him. This woman suffering from hemorrhages, and it apparently has been going on for a long time, and she was at her wit's end and also at her finances' end, getting destitute. I don't think we, looking at this narrative, can fully grasp what this woman was really doing here. It really speaks of despair, but also of courage. Because what we encounter here, in both these narratives, the one that brackets the story of the woman with narratives, with hemorrhages, that story of the daughter of Jairus that was ill and then later died, and then Jesus went to her and took her by the hand and revived her again. What we really encounter here are the severity of the Jewish purity laws that determined if you were fit for human interaction to be part of normal society, and also if you were deemed acceptable to go to the temple and be in the presence of God. Those purity laws. It was because the thinking was God is holy, and if anything unholy, impure comes into contact with God or even with God's people, that person will be consumed by the holiness of God, and it will be an offense to God that something unholy and impure come into contact with God. So the Jewish purity laws were very strict and focused on, among other things, but two important ones, and we encounter both of them here in this narrative about the woman and the little girl, the 12-year-old girl. In the case of the woman, it was about bodily secretions. and excretions. Anything that went out of the body, especially in an abnormal way, was regarded as bringing impurity on that person, and everybody had to avoid that person. We know about leprosy that was regarded as being something that caused impurity. Now, leprosy is a wrong translation. Leprosy did not exist in those days in ancient Israel. It was more sores that had secretions. That was what was determined or indicated by the catchphrase leprosy. So if anybody had a sore that excreted something, that person was impure and had to be avoided. Because the body was regarded as a microcosm of society. And there was a very strong impetus to protect society and therefore to protect the body against anything that could penetrate. Because if you had a sore or there was any excretion that is abnormal, that is an indication that something can come into the body as well, and that caused the impurity. So boundaries were extremely important, and the bodily boundaries, the bodily whole, that had to be separated from anything that can do it harm, and for evil things to come into the body had to be protected, and the people had to be protected as well, society. So this person that could be the source of evil things and harmful things coming into their body had to be separated from the healthy and the good and the pure rest. It also had financial implications, because if you became impure, you had to go to the temple and make sacrifices. So you had to buy an offering. So it wasn't just social discarding of people, separating from the healthy and the pure and the desirable ones. It was also financially difficult if you were impure. You had to buy something from the temple to make that sacrifice. So here we have this woman. Not only did she disregard the purity laws by walking into a crowd, not only did she regard the other law that women did not have standing in society, and it was improper for a woman to approach anybody male that wasn't her husband or a very close relative in public. She did that. She touched Jesus' cloak. She ran the risk of people finding out that she was ritually impure, of the crowd becoming a mob, because she was making everybody around Jesus impure, and Jesus also, by coming so close to him and even touching him. That is what she did. And what is Jesus' reaction? Did he turn around and say, "What on earth are you doing? You idiot. I'm impure now. I can't continue with my healing, with the wonders I work"? No. He turned around and he had words of praise for her and continued. And the second great reason for impurity, he demolishes that as well. He walked to the corpse of the little girl. And if you touched the corpse, you were severely impure for a long period. Jesus disregarded that. He touched the girl's corpse, he pulled her up and revived her. We can make up our own minds whether these two narratives, the one bracketing the other, should focus on curing and whether the girl was indeed restored to life after she was dead. But I think we should agree on and realize and focus on is the restoration to full life and flourishing life, being accepted into society and being accepted through Jesus' interaction, to full status and full regard in God's eyes. Unconditional acceptance. And where compassion is the driving force and the highest good, and purity, and setting boundaries, and classification, and protecting against the evil or the other, that was not the directing force and guidance that Jesus acted upon. Does it have anything to say for us today? Unconditional acceptance. That was at the heart of Jesus' ministry, and that he illustrated repeatedly, over and over. This is the theme. God loves you, that love is unconditional. You are accepted. You don't have to belong to a certain class. You don't have to belong to a certain group. You don't have to be a stellar individual. I wanted to make a side comment on being accepted into elite universities, but I'll leave that for the moment. But I think it is applicable for us as well, especially as God's people, as a community where we covenanted this morning with one another again, to be a certain kind of community, because we are also good, because we are human, of drawing boundaries and trying to protect certain things that we deem important. And we are constantly trying to protect what we have and where we are in life, because it's hard to get there quite often. And you don't want to ruin your investment in whatever, whether it's in status or achievement or in what you could acquire through life. But we're very good at drawing these boundaries as well and creating a desirable class according to what is important for us in life, whether it's a cultural line or an ethnic line, a racial line, a religious line. And we can carry on with a lot of examples about such things. I think the illustration of Jesus, of teaching it and illustrating it, that God's love should not be determined by our preferences and by the boundaries that we create and project. That God's love is indeed unconditional. And we can experience and celebrate that. And we should be that kind of community. And I think the United Church of Christ, which we are associated with, that denomination tries to be the denomination that has that at the heart of its ethos and of its polity, the way that it is church. One illustration of that is not practiced fairly commonly in religious circles is the invitation to communion. Every Sunday when we have communion, either Amy or I or the minister officiating would say, everybody present is invited to celebrate this meal. We will not inquire whether you are a member of the church or a member of any other church. And I've wrestled with that invitation for a long time, because I'm with my whole being there. But then I think about, if you invite everybody and you tolerate everything and anything, this beloved community will be destroyed or harmed sometimes. And then the obvious dawned on me after a lot of thinking, and I was quite disappointed in myself that it took me so long to arrive at the obvious. That unconditional love and also the invitation, the open invitation to communion, should be balanced. by that great commandment. And I try to say that when we have communion. We do not require about your membership, but I hope that you have in your heart the commitment to live the great commandment and to follow the example and the teachings of Jesus. And on that there can be no compromise. Otherwise, the beloved community will be destroyed. Unconditional acceptance, a core aspect of what we think God's character is as we find it in the Scriptures, need to be balanced in the community with an uncompromising adherence to the great commandment to do the law of love. We should, if we want to belong to this community that is based on unconditional acceptance, not think that it means unconditional tolerance of everything. There is a clear guideline for us if we want to belong here or to any beloved community. We should be each other's guardians and take care of one another and see that we walk in the ways of love. And we should have the willingness and open ourselves and learn the ability to be transformed in God's Spirit. If that willingness is not there to be open to be transformed so that we leave harmful behaviors behind and let go of that, then we should self-select and leave the community if we are unable to do that. Or the harsher form of that, but we owe it to each other and we owe it to the discipleship that we profess of Jesus. Enter into conversation with one another and say, my brother, my sister, in God's love I approach you, but I plead with you, we cannot behave like this because it is destroying and it is shouting against and it is shouting in the face of God's love for us. And those are two harsh realities, difficult to balance, because unconditional love sounds wonderful, and wonderful indeed it is. Posing against it, tolerance that is not beyond or without boundaries, but that calls on us to adhere to it with great commitment, to follow in the ways of Jesus. As we contemplate those two seemingly contradictory themes, let us engage one another on the deepest level of faith, with courage as this woman illustrated. And once again, contemplate what boundaries do we set and for what reason. While Jesus blew up the superficial boundaries in his life, he also laid down a strict boundary that we cannot get around if we follow in his ways. And may we find in God's love and in the Spirit the wisdom to walk while we hold these two themes, and we hope and pray to be renewed by the tension that we sense between them. May it bring renewal for us. Amen.